Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 52 Book Club. I am so excited. I am here today with Kate Quinn and Janie Chang, and we are going to be talking about their newest book, The Phoenix Crown. We are so excited to have them here with us tonight. Welcome, Kate and Janie.
Thanks for
And
inviting
I,
us.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It's great to be here.
yeah. Um, Quick introductions. My name is Liz. I have Trisha here with me as well. So if you guys are joining in live for the YouTube, be sure to post any comments or questions that you have in the YouTube chat. Trisha will keep an eye on those for us, and we'll, jump in. We'll have some space at the end of the discussion as well for those questions that you may have for Kate and for Janie. Kate and Janie, thank you so much. Um, let's talk about the Phoenix Crown. We did this read along a couple weeks ago as a group. There was over 780 of us who were all reading together. We read over the course of a week. We kind of broke it up into different sections, and then we chatted each day about these different sections. So it was really a lot of fun, and so grateful for both of you and for this beautiful book. Um, One of
Oh,
the things that I love hearing from an author is just hearing them describe the book in their own words. Obviously, we just read it, so most of us are very familiar with it. But I'm wondering if maybe you could give us just a couple sentences about the Phoenix Crown.
Well, in a nutshell, we like to describe it as a book that is about two extraordinarily different women. One, a talented Chinatown seamstress, and the other, a down on her luck New York City opera singer, whose lives are going to be forever changed when they are thrown together just before the chaos and flame of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. And how their lives change and how their worlds and the worlds of their friends change as well is something that you do need to read the book to figure out.
and also, at the core of it, it is a story about female friendships and how women lifting each other up can help each other through very, very difficult and traumatic times. And this is what the two main characters and two other characters in this novel do, as well as a cast of, other surrounding characters. And we had a lot of fun writing this, and we were just so happy that our own friendship led to this story about friendship between women.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, I think that is amazing that you guys were able to write this book together. I know that's one of the questions that a lot of people had was just how did this story come to be with both of you as a collaboration? What was the initial spark?
Well, it sort of started with me, or as Janie always liked to say when we were doing events together on tour, she would say, "It's your fault." No. But it kind of started with me in the sense that I had been wanting for a while to write a book about the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. It's one of the seminal national disasters and natural disasters in United States history. It is, incredibly, you know, taut and gristy period of time that has a surprising number of famous faces and marquee names. I really thought it'd be a great setting for a story with a built-in ticking clock. And so I thought, the more I was looking at it, though, that I kept thinking, this really needs a Chinatown heroine. I knew I wanted an opera singer heroine, but I thought it has to reflect Chinatown, and in a big way, because it seemed to me that so many books about San Francisco sort of only feature Chinatown peripherally, and Chinatown and its people were so much a important part of San Francisco's history. It's such a vibrant part, and I thought they really needed a front and center spotlight. And so I sort of called Janie up and crossed my fingers and just said, it's like, is this something that you might be interested in exploring? Because, when you ask someone to, commit to writing a book, they have to be just as obsessed by the history if they're going to be spending this much time with it as you are. So I just really favor a call and cross my fingers.
And then I said, all right, well, give me 5 minutes with Wikipedia and I'll get back to you. And because, as Kate says, not only do you have to be obsessed by the history, but in all that history, you need to find a reason for your character to be there, to be doing things, to be challenged, to have, goals and to be thwarted in those goals. And was there enough of an interesting situation for a Chinatown heroine? And the answer was absolutely yes. And I think I got back to Kate within about 3.5 minutes. And we just started plotting from there. And we had other things on our agenda. For example, we met during a book tour, 3 cities, 3 authors. We had our friend Jennifer Robson with us, and that's where we became friends. And ever since then, we've been trying to sort of synchronize our book releases so that we might be able to book tour in the same year. And, this is it. Both of us writing the same book, they have to send us on tour together.
And plus, we thought too that that book tour where we met, the 3 authors, 3 cities. That was where really Janie and I first got to know each other again. Yeah, everything that could go wrong on a tour went wrong. I mean, if there were cars, the cars broke down. If it was, weather was an issue, it was the hottest day of the year with broken air conditioners. If there were flights, the flights were missed. If there was luggage, the luggage was lost. Everything went wrong. And yet we had such a great time, and we laughed so much, through every disaster. And I thought, when it came time to, think about writing this book together, I thought, if we could survive the debacle that became known in infamy as the hysterical fiction tour, the odds that we could actually still be friends at the end of that, the odds that we could write a book together and still be friends at the end of it were honestly pretty good. And thank goodness that did prove to be the case, because, we did want to go on book tour together. We figured it would not be fun for us or for the readers if by the time we got on book tour, we were no longer speaking. So we had a great time when we were writing. We had a great time when we were on tour, and we accomplished our primary goal, which is that we wanted a friendship that was intact by the end of it and a book that we were proud of.
Wow.
And I think that is also the sort of subtext behind that question when people said, well, how did you write this book together? And it's also wrapped up in questions of process and how did you handle conflicts with, different ideas for the story. And I'm just going to say that we plotted the heck out of this book first. One of the things that brought Kate and I close together was that we discovered we had a deep, abiding love and faith in spreadsheets. So we plotted this very carefully because we don't live in the same city, and we knew we had to work remotely. And so that was when we decided that Kate would write one character, I would write the other character, she would write Gemma, I would write Su Ling. We would alternate those points of view, and that allowed us to work independently while still having a plot that dovetailed together nicely at the beginning and end of every chapter, because we knew from our spreadsheet what the beginning of the next chapter was going to be like.
Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating. That was one of the things in our discussion as we were talking about this, was just how beautifully it was meshed together, and how you could still see your unique voices in the chapters that you wrote, especially for those of us who have read some of your previous work. We could still hear your unique voices, which I think is so important, and yet they just fit together so seamlessly. It was really, really beautifully done, and I think that was, yeah, definitely one of the questions that just popped up, is how is this possible? How could they both be writing, these 2 chapters that kind of fit together? I'm sure that was a little bit of a tricky situation, but it makes total sense with the spreadsheet. Yeah.
Well, it was something that we discussed from the beginning, was, not just that we wanted to work together, but how. And, when it came time to plot this book, we very much thought, I knew the kind of heroine I wanted to write, and then I just was like, all right, Janie, if you want to create a heroine that you want to write, and then we're going to just put those women together and then add an earthquake and stir. And so therefore, everything that we plotted was very much, organically grown out of those characters. And it was something that, when we also decided that we wanted to do the alternating chapters, that was for the purpose of the fact that we do have very different writing styles. And we thought, well, this will make it easier, because that way, if, Janie writes all the scenes from Su Ling's point of view and I wrote all the scenes from Gemma's point of view, it doesn't matter if we have, different sounding authorial voices, because the fact is these women are very different. So they should sound different in their when you're looking from Gemma's eyes versus when you're looking through Su Ling's eyes. So that was, partially to keep things a little easier on us, and it certainly did work that way. And when it came down to the time of how to coordinate, once especially we had heroines were crossing over into each other's scenes, we always had a real, we had a sort of an open-ended thing there where, because as soon as you had a chapter done, we would upload it to a shared Google Drive so the other person would read it, which is a little nerve-wracking because you have that feeling of like, oh my God, it's my rough draft. I can't let anyone see this, but you have to get over that. I mean, Janie had to be able to read when I was writing and vice versa. But, if I had Su Ling in a scene, I would maybe, and I wanted to give her some dialogue, I might say, in brackets, I'd like her to say something like this: Janie, do you want to fill in what she says because you know her voice better than me? Or vice versa. Janie would say, I have a scene with Gemma. I roughed in some dialogue for her. Feel free to tweak it however you want so it sounds more like her. And so that way we could guarantee that our women sounded consistent regardless of what scene they were in and regardless of who was writing that scene.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
I can honestly say that there really was no ego involved, because there would be times when I would make comments on the side to Kate saying, in this situation, I really feel that Su Ling would react much more violently and emotionally. Can you sort of dial up the drama here? And she would do the same for me. And that was also something that we never actually formally discussed it, but we found that neither of us were redlining in line. We were always using comment bubbles and, putting out suggestions, because we both were fans of each other's writing anyway. So we wanted to be respectful and make sure that we each got to tell our own story, but at the same time have a complete book that was telling the story that both of us wanted to write.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think that came across really, really well. Like, I think that was very, very beautifully done, and you both definitely, you hit that. We had the unique voices, and yet, I hadn't thought about the fact that, there's that dialogue that's happening, for both characters in the different chapters as well. And so the fact that, you thought that all out, it was, I love that. That's great. One of the questions that we had in terms of the setting, I know, Kate, you had talked about obviously San Francisco, and you had wanted this as this kind of backdrop, this pivotal backdrop. How did you guys go about doing research? Did you travel to San Francisco together? What did that look like?
Oh, we had the best time in San Francisco. We really did. Because there is... Usually when a historical novelist goes to a museum with, say, a husband, not naming names, at about a point, 1.5 hours into it, you hear this voice that says, how much longer are we going to spend in this museum?
And you go with a fellow history nerd instead, nobody says that. In fact, you're more likely to be dragged out kicking and screaming like by the museum staff than you are likely to have someone.
We need to eat now.
So we really had a great time in San Francisco. I mean, we had it broken down to we're going to see this archive now. We're going to go to this museum display here. We're going to go to the California Academy of Science, where Alice Eastwood, the botanist character, worked. And they actually gave us access to her personal papers from the archives. So we got all kinds of good research there. We were going all over Nob Hill to see, the areas in which that would the house be on this street. We were looking at, we went to, in a fabulous occasion of, the way that research will change your book when you find something unexpected. We went to see the Beaupei exhibit at one of the museums. And the Beaupei is a fantastic Chinese couturier who is noted for the fabulous embroidery of her work. We just at the Met Gala, she usually has somebody wearing a Met Gala piece. It's like that is that level of her work. And we saw these beautiful embroidered dresses and trains and tapes that they would have these placards that said, 20,000 hours of work embroidering one piece. And when we walked into that museum, We thought we knew like Sulaim was an embroideress who did some piecework to make money on the side. And by the time we walked out of that exhibit, which we really just went to for fun because it was there, it was a little reward to us ourselves after we had spent all those times, sneezing in the archives in the dust. But by the time we walked out of that exhibit, we knew that she was going to be a Paris couturier by the time we were done with her. And that it ended up changing quite a lot in the book. So there's always something you find in research that will change the course of the book, but even though you didn't expect to find it. And that is a very fun part of the research process.
And I don't know if I need to even mention this, but obviously our week in San Francisco for doing research was laid out on a spreadsheet.
Yes.
And so
I
speaking
think
of, oh no, go ahead. Yeah.
I know. I should also say that we also got to visit a couple of stately homes in the Bay Area, and I managed to pull out some contacts, and we, as Kate says, wore out not one but two curators who walked us through Filoli House and Gardens, which is a fabulous, fabulous mansion, and the other one is Carowlands, which has a very restricted schedule for public visits. But again, friends of friends pulled strings, and the curator himself showed up, and then his friend, another curator, showed up. So we were trailing behind these two curators who were geeking out, and we were geeking out behind them. It was wonderful.
And it gave us a lot of really good info about, how the whole upstairs, downstairs of a Gilded Age mansion in California works, which is a real big part of the book. And it's really good that we did have Janie's Rolodex to get us into those particular houses, because the other option that we were considering was trying to get to the James Flynn mansion, which is one of the few surviving mansions on Nog Hill that did survive the fire from post-earthquake. And the Flood Mansion is now a private club, and it is closed except for events. So we had a half-formed plan at one point that we were going to pose as brides looking at wedding venues. And if we hadn't gotten into Carowlands and gotten into Filoli and been able to do our research there, we would have done it.
I love that dedication. That's amazing. Speaking, mentioned Alice. How did you first uncover Alice? Who first found her?
I think it must have been Kate but I don't know how you ran across her. But it was one of these things where she showed up, we read about her, and it was like, she's got to be in the book. That's all.
Yeah, she showed up very early in my research, and I knew she was going to have to be a character in some way because, she was this woman who was a botanist and she had this fantastic moment that is quite somewhat legendary in the annals of the various heroic deeds of people who distinguished themselves in the fires after the earthquake. And she quite literally had this moment where she realized that the museum and a building where her work was done at the California Academy was going to burn, and there was no saving it. And so this woman literally looked at the fact that her office is on the 6th floor, and the staircase was shattered, but the banister was brass, so that was still holding. So she hung up her lunch pail on a mastodon horn that was on the wall, and then literally edged her way up 6 floors on the outside of the staircase, all the way up to her office. And then she managed to lower down to the ground below and save 1,500 rare plant samples from the collection, from the flames. And she got out of the fires and away from San Francisco with 1,500 plant samples, saved for science, and the clothes on her back, and not much else. And as soon as I read that, and don't worry, anybody who hasn't read this is not a spoiler. This is a Wikipedia page, literally. So it's there. So as soon as we read that, it's like, we gotta write that scene. We'll just, include one of our own characters alongside if that's exactly what we did. But Alice was such a great character that she really threatened to take over the book. And really, we realized that she would be a great character too because she was a mentor to our two characters.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that banister scene is, so inspiring. It's one of those things that's like, if you didn't know it was fact, you would assume that it was fiction because it's just incredible, right? And I think for a lot of people, we read the book and we didn't even realize that Alice Eastwood was based on a real historical figure until we read your author's note at the back, which was also very well done, very informative. Love how you guys, just were able to help shed some light on what was real, what was fiction, what you guys had blended together. And so yeah, so such an incredible woman. I can totally see why you wrote her into her story or into your story.
Well, the thing about our two ladies is that, Celine is a young woman who's, struggling to be more than just a seamstress and, a young girl who's being sent off to an arranged marriage. And she's looking at her embroidery skills to get her out of this situation and win her some financial independence. Gemma is, an opera singer who is struggling to get from the chorus to the spotlight. And it's hard making a life in the arts, and all she has is her voice to do it. And the thing about these two women is that they're both still struggling to establish a path for themselves, independence and a career. And Alice is a shining, real life example of a woman who did that. I mean, she's much older than them. She's in her late 40s. She is firmly established in her field. She's respected by men and women alike. She's self-taught, but, still a scholar whose work is valued. So she is the proof to them that it might be hard for a woman in this era to have a career in financial independence, but it is possible. And that's why we really thought she was a great sort of mentor figure to them. It's because she does end up, sort of be someone they both look up to in different ways.
And people still look up to her. When we got to the California Academy of Sciences, we'd written to them beforehand, and we said we were particularly interested in any sort of artifacts from Alice Eastwood. It was just like the doors burst open because they just adore and revere her, and they were just so thrilled that some random member of the public was that interested in her.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, like groundbreaking. When you think about like women who, change fields and who push boundaries and step out of the assigned gender roles of the time period. Yeah, incredible. I'm really glad that you were able to highlight her and kind of, yeah, bring her to all of our attention. I also want to talk about Su Ling because another very incredible character, and obviously set with the backdrop of, yeah, San Francisco, 1906 Chinatown, which I thought was really beautifully done. It was very vivid, but also had a very just kind of like everyday life, like what it actually would have been like to live in that time period in Chinatown. And I thought it was very well done. Jeannie, can you kind of tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that you thought it was well written, especially sort of ordinary domestic things, because that was one of the aspects of Chinatown that I wanted to bring forward.
Hmm.
In that time, the media and politicians were very racist, very anti-Chinese, and a lot of it was, they needed to drum up votes, and nothing does that more than stoking hate and fear of the other. But so if you read about Chinatown in contemporary newspapers, it's all about, it's dens of iniquity and, and gambling parlors and whorehouses, and just made the whole place sound like nothing but, bordello after bordello. But in actual fact, there were families living in Chinatown. There were families who kept stores, who ran little factories, sent their children to school. And in the archives, there's photographic archives at the San Francisco Public Library. And there are some beautiful and charming photos by a gentleman named Arnold Gente, who took pictures of San Francisco before the earthquake. And there's children walking hand in hand down the street going to school. There's a man who's selling flowers from his wheelbarrow. So, just really ordinary daily life. And that's also what Su Ling wants the people she knows to understand about Chinatown. Yeah. That it's getting a really bad press. So that was really important. But at the same time, I also wanted to show that the people who lived in Chinatown were moving towards a transitional stage. Su Ling is the first generation of Chinese immigrant who's born in the U.S. Her parents came to the U.S. She was born there, and she had been educated at a mission school, so she was equally fluent in Chinese and in English, in Chinese culture and in American culture. And she's sort of straddling these two ways of life, and there's there's issues of identity. There's issues of, am I going to be obedient and do what my nefarious uncle wants me to do, which is basically, he sold me off to the highest bidder, or is there a way for me to carve my own way, the way I've seen, my school teachers who've carved their own way, the way that I can see that, there are women who marry people they love rather than be pushed into an arranged marriage. So that was part of the lots of conflict and challenge thing that I felt would be good for shaping Su Ling's personality.
Yeah. Yeah, and she had lots of personality. Like I really loved her determination, her passion, her drive. I thought that was really well done, just a very well-rounded, really interesting character that you were able to develop there. And Kate, I heard that you yourself have a bit of an opera background as well. Is that correct?
Well, it's true, and the fact is that before I was a writer, I actually trained as an opera singer. It's what I went to Boston University for, and that is, something I know very, very well. And so ever since, I ended up becoming a writer instead, it's been a question that I get asked periodically about, like, are you ever going to use, your background and write about an opera singer or the world of opera? And I always thought, yes, I'd love to do that, but I'll need to find the right story for that. And if I really knew from the beginning that the San Francisco earthquake would be a great place to tell a story about an opera singer, because opera is very much a part of the earthquake's history. And that is because the night before the earthquake hit was the social event of the San Francisco season, which was opening night of the traveling Metropolitan Opera Company, which had just come to town and was launching what was supposed to be a 2-week run. And they opened their 2-week run with a legendary performance of Carmen, which was starring none other than the great Enrico Caruso. And Caruso, ironically, he decided to come on this trip because he could have gone to Naples instead, and he was a little bit worried about Vesuvius looking a little grumbly right next door. So he literally decided to come to the West Coast instead, because it was more geologically sound. So, believe me, in the rubble, that you had Caruso in Italian just basically say, what the hell, I'm never coming to this city again, and he never did. But he did sing in this one legendary performance of Carmen, and I thought, and everyone in San Francisco was there, from the millionaires and their diamonds, and there were a lot of them, because by this point, San Francisco isn't just a boom town for the gold rush and the railroad anymore. It's a place that, it's the den of iniquity on the West Coast. It's, a big city with big money, and people with money want places to show it off. So you had an opera house. And that Grand Opera House had this great moment where everybody was there, everybody dressed to their finest, all from the millionaires to the groundlings, and everybody, it was a great, great night. And then the next morning, a little after 5 a.m., literally the newspapers with the reviews of that opera are hitting the steps of the houses, and that's when the earthquake comes, and everything tumbles down. And they're right from that moment in the stars right down to the earth cracking under everyone's feet. And the Grand Opera House burned down. There was no 2-week run of the Met. Caruso and the rest of the singers got out of town as fast as they could when their hotel burned down. And I thought, perfect place to put an opera singer or heroine. Someone who's trying to get from the chorus to the spotlight. And that's how I created Gemma. She does have a voice rather similar to mine, because I had her singing a lot of the same repertoire that I used to study, and I put her as a little bit. She's a little bit of me, I suppose. She's also a bit of my college voice professor, who was not only a wonderfully talented opera singer, but she did in fact start on a tiny farm in Nebraska, just the way Gemma did, and she rode a glorious golden voice out of that town in Nebraska all the way to the big cities, and ended up singing the Queen of the Night in all the great opera houses of Europe.
Oh, fun.
And I thought that's a great invitation for Gemma. And so I gave Gemma a little bit of me and a little bit of my professor as well. And I created her as, she's someone who's hitting her vocal peak in her early 30s, but she hasn't quite had that stroke of luck yet that will vault her from the tiny parts in the chorus to the role of being a star. And that's what she needs, and she has a chance for that in San Francisco as the newest member of the Met Opera Company chorus. And That chance, though, does not lead her in the places that she thinks it will. So that's how I created Gemma, and that was sort of the background behind her. And I do feel very glad that I finally got a chance to use my operatic background for a heroine. I feel like all my student loans sort of like came out of the corner to say, yes, our hour is here at last. We have been waiting for this.
That's really fun that you're able to use that that background and to create this character of Gemma. There was a lot of a lot of really great moments with Gemma as well. I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but I do think there was this really beautiful moment where she's playing the piano as earthquakes, as stuff is happening, and so I'll leave that for readers to discover for themselves. But I do think that there were a lot of just really kind of core key beautiful moments woven throughout where we have these their art and their passion and how that brought light in moments of darkness within the story and as the world around them is crumbling. And I think also too, one of the metaphors that we were particularly looking at was the Queen of the Night. I thought that was very interesting how you got to have it both as an aria and as this flower. Can you talk to us a little bit about this this motif throughout the story?
Well, it all becomes something. There's a lot in this, since there is a disaster. About what are the things people save in a fire, and what are the things that people collect? What's important to people? And we do have as a central character in this book is a railway millionaire who is a great collector. He's a collector of Chinese antiquities, and we decided he could also be a collector of rare plants and and arboreal samples. Because it was quite fashionable to have a conservatory in those days. And I already knew it would be fun for Gemma to be a high soprano. She could sing the Queen of the Night, which is one of the great operatic roles. It has these two spectacularly hard arias for a soprano, where you need to be able to sing a high F, an F above high C, which is not easy. And it is one of the sheer acts of nerve that you can ever perform on a stage in front of an audience. And I already knew it would be fun if Gemma could sing that, at some critical point, and she does. And then when we were also looking around as Alice as a botanist for some botanical themes, I realized that there is a plant that is considered one of the rarest flowers in the world. And it was a varietal of succulent, called the Queen of the Night. And the flower only blooms for a single night, and it is supposed to smell incredible, and by morning the flower is dead. So that's why the flowers are indeed so rare. And as soon as I found it, it's like, that's perfect. It'll be a flower that's in the plant collection. It is a flower that Alice will admire as a botanist. It'll tie into the music as well. It will tie into some of the art that Sulangi embroiders the seas with in the themes in the chinoiserie that is collective of this millionaire. And then, of course, Jane then told me, oh, I've seen one of those. My family had one when I was a child. And I was like, no, tell me.
Yeah, I posted a picture on Facebook, and the thing is, for the other thing is that the Queen of the Night song is rage. It's just filled with rage, right? And at some point, the women in our novel just decide they've had it. They've had enough of being afraid. They're going to be angry now. So.
I think that's very very powerful, that juxtaposition there, like with the rage behind the aria, the vengeance there, and yet this beautiful flower that blooms so rarely and so spectacularly. Very beautiful to see that all kind of play out throughout the story as well. What would you say for readers is something that you hope that they take away from this story?
Well, I think Janie touched on this earlier, but the ways in which women and the friendships between women can be sustaining and uplifting, especially in the most and the hardest times of life, and that's something that has been done in the cast as well. That's true of the cast, and it is true amount too.
Yeah, I love that you guys write such strong female characters, especially, Gemma, she starts out, very independent. She wants to do things herself. She realizes she can't for, a variety of reasons with the migraines, and kind of falls under patronage that leads her down a different kind of path, but realizing that she needs those people in her life, those friends, and that support as well. Yeah, so important and key.
I think that what I like about our characters is they really do not know how strong they can be until they are tested, until Suli has to go and rescue someone, until Gemma has to basically put on a front that nothing is wrong so that, the guy never suspects that there's other plans, going on to bring him down, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, just so well done. I loved, that you guys were able to plot that out, and really bring that to life across the whole story there. Trisha, did we have any comments or questions from any of those who are tuning in live? I could take a couple seconds if you had
We've
anything.
got readers who are, readers who are just have been fascinated by the collaboration process and that had some personal connection, went to the same university that you did, or that have just had some joy in seeing things they can connect with in the story. Not questions per se that came up while I was looking, but more just really enjoyed the work, really enjoyed hearing about how it came to be.
Yeah.
Well, I
Thank
think
you, all of you who are watching. It is wonderful that you are finding a connection with the book and with the process and with the characters and history.
I think that one of the comments that we get sometimes when we go on book tour is how much they appreciate that Gemma suffers from migraines because, then as now, so many women's problems are dismissed by the medical profession. And people have said, do either of you suffer from migraines? Because this is so real.
And the fact is, I certainly have not ever had one, and I'm very grateful for that. But our editor, who edited this book, is a migraine sufferer, and I have a number of friends who do as well. So I was mining everybody's personal experiences to make sure that the experience of having a migraine is definitely portrayed as, realistically as possible. And also, too, that I wanted to make sure that there wasn't the thing of a magic cure that will suddenly just make everything go away, because in real life, I think it kind of quite annoyed in books when there's suddenly a magic cure that makes suffering go away, because in real life, quite often, if you suffer chronic pain, there is managing it, but there is not necessarily just a magic fix. And all you can do is manage it and do your best. And I felt it was important to show that too, that there isn't like, well, if you just tried harder, you found the perfect medication, or you finally find true love or your dream job, then the rest of your problems go away. It's like, life isn't that convenient, and it shouldn't be even in a book. So that was definitely something that was important, I thought, in showing Gemma as a migraine sufferer.
Yeah.
Oh, I do have something to show the readers. Hang on, I still got our show and tell box.
Yeah, this was something that we actually brought on tour with us, is that we do a little bit of a show and tell. And while Janie's getting it, I will show you that, because we find often, especially for Western readers, they don't really have a clear idea of what a phoenix crown looks like. And because we think of phoenixes as red and gold, rising from the ashes, but phoenix crowns in the Chinese tradition were these crowns worn by Chinese empresses and consorts, and they were blue and it's that blue that you see here on these actual vintage Chinese hair pins and hair ornaments.
Wow.
And the blue is from kingfisher feathers. No, kingfisher feathers, they're literally, taken, they are, carefully cut, and then they are glued onto gold or brass or glass backings, and then, very carefully wired into these really intricate shapes. As you can see, like, these are flowers, and there would be entire crowns that would be gold wire work, and then ornament pieces that were overlaid with this fantastically electric blue feather. And it took a lot of artisanship and craftsmanship, and it was, which is one reason why the feathers were, if seen as valuable, if not more so, than the gold, the pearls, the gems that would also be on the crown. So we didn't want to include that. We used to include that on our tour as a way to pass it around so people would know a little bit better, what did these crowns look like? And there is a phoenix crown that is a central artifact in the book, and which its particular fate ends up being a particularly important key at one point.
I As you can tell, we had fun on the book tour.
Yeah,
I
that
would
is
also say too,
spectacular.
we wanted to bring the hairpins because because to make them part of the official tour because we both ended up with like those are Janie's pieces. I actually also have a kingfisher feather Chinese vintage Chinese hairpin, which is we were guessing it's anywhere from the 1900 to maybe at the latest the 1940s. So these are quite old. You can find them for sale on like vintage shops, jeweler shops, and Etsy, which is where we got ours. And we felt we needed to include them on the tour because there was questions asked in our households, when private park statements came in, and some people, like spouses, wanted to know exactly why the buying of vintage Chinese antique hair ornaments made of kingfisher feathers counted as a legitimate business expense. Very important then to include it as part of the business
Of course.
trip
Yeah.
on the tour.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, no, that's beautiful. I mean, I'm glad that you guys made that purchase decision because I think that does help kind of visualize what you're talking about. I think, yeah, that's really fun. Fun. I don't want to keep us, oh, that's my doorbell. I don't want to keep us too much longer because I know we've all got other things going on this evening. But Kate, I know you have another book coming out soon, hitting the shelves this summer.
Yes, my next book is coming out July 9th. It is called The Briar Club. It is actually the book that I abandoned in the middle of writing to write The Phoenix Crown. I was midway through it, and then we got contracted for The Phoenix Crown, and they said, well, we think we'd like to put this one out first. And so therefore I stopped the Briar Club 40,000 words in, and then I wrote my part of Phoenix Crown, and then I went back to it. So I've never quite written a book like that before, but you do what you have to. And the Briar Club is a bit of a shift in pace for me. It is a story of an all-female boarding house in early 1950s Washington, D.C., and it is an incredibly diverse group of women who are thrown together in this very interesting, turbulent period of time, which, is encompassing the Korean War, the Cold War, the standoff with USSR. It is the end of the Women's World War II baseball leagues, McCarthyism, the Red Scare, all kinds of really interesting and very gristy bits of history. So that is the Briar Club. It is coming out July 9th, and I'm going to be on tour again, sadly without Janie this time, which is really sad because I really like going on tour with someone, so there's someone to watch the luggage while someone else gets the coffee, and that's just
Yes.
going to be me this time. So, which is too bad. But
Basically, I mean, we were on such a busy and tight schedule that by the end of it, it was like the two of us added up to a single functioning adult person. So we
especially
needed
in the morning hours.
to be together.
I believe it. And Janie, what about you? Do you have any
Do you think you'll write
projects?
together again?
Oh,
Sorry?
no, go ahead, Trisha.
Sorry, Liz.
Janie's next book is coming out, so
Right.
that
So,
first.
again, for some strange reason, even though we had to write the Phoenix Crown in between, like before our next novels, we never thought to move the deadlines for our next novels. So finally, my agent did that, and I'm handing mine in on June 1st, but it won't come out until 2026, early in the year.
Okay.
But it is a Gothic novel set in pre-1914, pre-World War I Shanghai. I love Gothic novels, and I wanted to, take a shot at writing one, but set in the world of, Shanghai, which was a very interesting place back then. And the title is The Fourth Princess. And the title, again, I can blame on Kate, because I was telling her about a missionary memoir that I was reading about a woman who had been the wife of the first U.S. ambassador to China back in those days, and she witnessed something. And when I said, and Kate said, so you have to call it The Fourth Princess. And that was the germ of the story. And I feel like I finally got a handle on it. But, it was why did we do that, Kate? It was sort of like I think we said, a novel is 100,000 words. You'll write 50,000. I'll write 50,000. How bad can it be?
Yeah, I do think the words were stuck and how hard could it be? And you never, in retrospect, you never hand the universe a straight line like that.
Did you find it easier to write together or more difficult overall?
I think it just has its own challenges. I mean, you're not writing as many words, but you're going to be spending probably the same amount of time
Right.
in discussion
Yep.
as you're, figuring out how to dovetail things. I mean, so like the time probably is not going to be substantially less, even if you're writing fewer
Yeah.
words.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But I think the real positives is two heads really are better than one. Sometimes when you're working on your own book and you are stuck and you suddenly realize this plot line is going nowhere. There has to be some kind of a key turning point here where the character realizes something. But what is that something? And it would be like, okay, we need to get together on Zoom and talk it over and toss around some ideas, and you're not second guessing yourself. It's sort of like, you like this idea, I like this idea, let's go with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it really is a case of when you have someone to bounce those ideas off with, you can so often find the answer, a better answer than you would have found by yourself, and you're certainly going to find it faster when you have someone else to do that with, and you're not just sort of having thoughts ricochet around the inside of your own skull with nobody to bounce off of.
And we have heard horror stories and cautionary tales about authors who co-written something together and ended up not speaking to each other. And we were very careful not to let that happen. But honestly, after a while, it was so exciting to wait for Kate's next chapter to land on the Google Drive, because I knew there would be something in there that I could pull into my next chapter. And, and the other thing was, boy, are you ever motivated to keep to that writing schedule when you know that someone else is waiting for it, and it's not just you dawdling along, because I can disappoint myself, but I am not going to disappoint Kate, who is a professional and who's someone that I admire. And if I don't get my chapter up there, I'll never get to read her next chapter. So it was very motivating in that way.
It was kind of like, when it's just you always have a reason to procrastinate, because you're not disappointing someone else or keeping someone else waiting. But it's like, as Janie said, it's like, she's waiting for it, and I want to see what she'll do with her part of the chapter. So it's like, I am much more motivated to actually get to work and not maybe waste 15 minutes on that BuzzFeed quiz about which Bridgerton brother I should be dating. So it's like, I'm going to get to work, I'm going to get it done, we're going to throw it up there. And then it really did get the feeling after a while of like, we're standing on opposite sides of the fence and we're throwing pieces of the story back and forth over the fence at each other. And that was a great feeling.
Yeah, that's amazing. Trisha, I think you had one more question.
Oh, just their inquiring minds want to know if you will write together again.
Oh my
I'd say
goodness.
never say never.
We're just getting over the book tour. And Kate is about to do the whole thing. Kate, I won't be with you, but me and the book tour backpack will be with you in spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at this point, like, never say never. We had such a great time with us. We would never rule it out. But it would be a question of finding the right idea that we were both equally interested in. And it would also be a question of, like, Janie has to get her Shanghai Gothic tale off her plate. I have to get this book released, and then I have another book after that I am contracted for that I also need to finish up first. So we need to clear our plates first, and then maybe after that we can talk about, like, okay, is there a mutual idea we could look at that might do, give us both that same light bulb feeling. But never say never. We have a great time.
Yeah, and
Great.
I would say that our spouses had a great time, because for pretty much 3 years, I think I've been ignoring my husband. So now I need to step back a little bit after I've had this one and go sailing with him, go on some vacations. There, honey, we're still married.
Oh, well, it's been so good chatting with both of you this evening. We've had a really great time. Sorry we went a little bit over time, but it's just been good getting to hang out and to hear your thoughts and your heart, and to see how this book came together to be what it is. I know we had a lot of fun reading reading the Phoenix Crown together as a group, and so it's just been really good. Thank you so much. To everyone who is joining in tonight live, the Phoenix Crown is available. If you haven't yet grabbed a copy or haven't yet read it, go do so. Also, all of Kate Quinn and Janie Chang's backlist, I highly recommend. I will say that the Rose Code and the Porcelain Moon are probably like both hit my top 10 favorite all-time historical fiction. So highly recommend all of their work. Definitely check that out. Um, Again, yeah, thank you everyone for being here. Like and subscribe here on YouTube. Be sure to give Janie and Kate a follow as well on their socials, as well as the 52 Book Club. We have another read along coming up in July, which I will be announcing the book choice for that later. So be sure to sign up for emails as well so that you'll be the first to know our next read along as well. Thank you everyone for joining us. Hope you have a great evening and happy reading.